Hi! Maybe this is a somewhat unusual context for this channel, because I usually leave everything aside and focus on being as professional as possible. But I think these moments are also necessary, because few people can imagine what it means to work behind the front lines. Let's call it that. Reporting on any kind of conflict, especially when we're talking about a war, always comes with a price. And usually, we are the ones who pay it. Today, we're here to talk about breaking news that I would love for as many people as possible to see. Because right now, the Ukrainian front will combine combative journalism, as I often say, with a human face, since that's very important here. It's not cold, insensitive information that you just see and, well, leave somewhere in your mind until the next piece of news you get. Or maybe to leave it there forever? The truth is, what's happening now on the front lines is very costly, not just in terms of soldiers' lives, but also for many people like me, the personal, psychological, and emotional exhaustion costs. And I would love for, I repeat, as many people as possible to watch this video. Not so much to learn about the situation in Ukraine, which right now is absolutely critical for the Ukrainian army, but to realize one single thing, which is what makes me cry, day in and day out. And this is what stays behind the cameras and what you never see. Every time I'm preparing, well, many times I'm preparing a report, or analyzing the situation, or talking with military personnel, I have only one thing in my mind, which is the key to all of this: that the end is absolutely inevitable, and the only thing that will change along the way is the number of people suffering, both civilians and military, involved in all of this, on both the Russian and Ukrainian sides. Let no one be fooled. I understand that for the Western population, this conflict feels incredibly distant. I get that the Western media just repeat themselves. If Russia hadn't gotten involved, that would have been it. But even before Russia got involved, there were people here living under bombardment. The fact is that now Ukraine's situation is absolutely critical, because make no mistake, we're not just here to listen to my tears and how tired I am of leaving my emotions behind the camera, trying to focus on the progress, as if these advances didn't mean losses on both sides. Constant losses that really do bring huge benefits to the usual ones, and they're paid for, on one hand, with the blood of soldiers, both Russian and Ukrainian, but on the other hand, they're paid for above all with Western taxpayers' money. Some people don't even believe this farce anymore. They simply have no choice but to keep contributing because their elites have decided that a war is a good opportunity to get rich at the expense of other people's suffering. This isn't the only one, of course, and we've talked about many others here. Right now, the Ukrainian armed forces are blowing up the Belgorod Dam, actually one of the largest in the region.
Well, I do. There goes the second one. He goes.
They're flying, they're flying.
Basically, to flood the positions of the Russian Federation in the Balkansk area. I'm not saying this to suggest we should save the Russian soldiers. At this point, I'm not expecting any kind of compassion. Yes, I'm saying it because this shows that the situation is absolutely critical. It is in Balkansk, where Russian soldiers have recently advanced to the south of the town, reaching the oil extraction plant. And there are images that confirm this absolutely brutal advance, which puts the future of the town in question. Definitely, in the hands of the Russian Federation, we know what the outcome will be. But to this, we must also add what is happening right now in Zaporozhye, where the Russian Federation has taken control of 3 key towns at the same time. And are you seeing this? On this map, these rectangles that go around the names of the towns in question are perfectly aligned, because this brings the armed forces of the Russian Federation closer to the rear of another key town in this area, in the Zaporozhye region, which is Hulipol. Because Ukraine was fortifying the southern flank and was not expecting at all that Russia would attack from the northwest, from where it will most likely end up approaching the armed forces of Ukraine. So, that's 2 areas already. To this, we should add what we talked about in yesterday's live broadcast, the absolutely critical situation of the armed forces of Ukraine in Pakrovsk and Mirnograd. So critical that even Vladimir Zelensky himself has acknowledged it. I'm not the one saying it. He admits it himself. Maybe not openly, but he has acknowledged that Russian troops are putting pressure there. According to the Russian Federation's version, there are 5,500 Ukrainian soldiers who are currently surrounded by Russian fire. The Russians have gathered their main assault force, a large number of troops, against Pakrovsk. This complicates the situation in both Pakrovsk and nearby areas. There is intense fighting inside the city and at its entrances. Logistics are difficult, but we must continue destroying the occupier. We must keep causing the Russians as many casualties as possible. These statements from Zelensky himself are absolutely key in terms of already acknowledging that they cannot hold the town. This issue isn't even being discussed. Instead, what is being highlighted is the ultimate goal of all this, which is to cause the Russian Federation as much damage as possible, and therefore to eliminate as many enemy forces as possible. It's war for the sake of war. To these advances, we must also add the recent progress made in Kupiansk, where the Ukrainian armed forces are mostly already retreating. The thing is, they have to do it by crossing the Oskol River, and they also have to transport their military equipment with them. Is this retreat going to turn into a real nightmare and probably result in almost as many losses as in the situation in Pakrovsk, as if it were Pakrovsk or Mirnograd, where a large part of the Ukrainian armed forces are still forced, because those are the orders from the Kiev regime, to remain in the town in question. The situation, in fact, in Pakrovsk and Mirnograd is on the verge of collapse. They have already sent some of their elite units there, while most of them were moved to Grigorovka, which is a nearby town. But there is another part, the elite forces of the main Directorate of Intelligence, trying to carry out some reconnaissance and sabotage actions, even if only to slow down the offensive of the Russian Federation. Here we return to these absolutely terrible images. If it is now forced to start releasing water, the dam, under constant attacks from the armed forces of Ukraine, will probably continue to receive those attacks. I highly doubt it will hold without releasing increasing amounts of water, which will flood the area, which will undoubtedly result in a catastrophe, at the very least an environmental one. Nobody cares. And again, we're not even talking about the Russian population that could suffer from this. The Russian soldiers who will be forced to change positions because theirs are going to be flooded, right? We're talking about a war. It's logical, since Ukraine also bombs civilian targets to try to stop the advance of the Russian Federation. But the key point of all this, and that's why, well, forgive me, today I decided to do it this way, so expressively, which is something I try to avoid at all costs most of the time. But I think it's necessary to emphasize this issue. It's absolutely inevitable that one day they will have to sign peace. It's absolutely inevitable that not only will they have to sign peace, but they will also have to sign the surrender. The longer they wait, the more territory and men they lose, and more people die overall. And well, maybe it won't help much, although I think it will, little by little. At least people are becoming aware of these things, and more people are getting informed about it. Is this really the work I do? Well, so that the whole world knows, on one hand, that the end is absolutely inevitable, and on the other hand, that we know exactly what it will end up being. This is not a matter of Russia, nor its desire to constantly remain in an armed conflict. It's the desire of the Western elites to get rich at any cost. It could be any viral disease. It could be, I'm not saying it was. Whoever wants to understand, let them understand. It could be anything else. A war, for example. And what hurts me the most is that instead of realizing this and protesting against those governments funding an armed conflict, instead of pressuring both sides to actually want a definitive agreement and not just a mere freezing of the front lines, because that won't solve anything at all. That instead of that, people still keep believing it, at least in part. Western propaganda keeps making people think that it's simply because Russia wants as much territory as possible. This hurts Russia and Russians more than anyone else, I assure you. If anyone thinks that this is something like Russian propaganda working in an absolutely vile and insensitive way, they're very mistaken. Once you land in an armed conflict, once you see humans suffering, and it's not even about seeing corpses or how many of them you see. I remember returning from here and wondering, what did war smell like? People in the West, especially, are often far removed from what war truly is. I wanted to hear that stench of rotten blood. Hands everywhere. Legs. Yes, well, that too, of course, I remember. You'll never forget the smell of Azovstal, but it doesn't make much of an impression. It's very striking to see 15-year-old children carrying stretchers with soldiers, but also with civilians. It's very striking to see houses that once sheltered families and are now ruins. It's very striking to see the eyes of the children. Some of them were born after 2014 in Donetsk and have never experienced peace, even though the war started in 2022. Strange, isn't it? According to the official story, I mean, things that have nothing to do with what people usually imagine are impressive. Something like a video game of death and destruction. What is impressive? What impresses the most about this war and all the ones that are really happening now? Because this isn't the only one, not by a long shot. What is impressive is how the same people as always manage to take us to the same place and the same point, in which they take all the wealth and we are left with all the suffering. I thank you all very much in advance. Thank you. The comments about whether I'm okay, about not crying, she will also know about them. When they say I have to appear professional, sometimes I think one has to show they're human too, so that the situation becomes somehow more real and moves away from just reading maps. Which, after all, doesn't make a difference or click in anyone's mind. They keep manipulating it, and for now, they keep getting away with it because even if Russia wins this conflict, the pockets of the usual people will be as full as always. Deep down, way deep down, taking away the geopolitical issue and focusing on the matters of benefit, let's call it that, the vast majority of humanity. We have already lost a long time ago, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop fighting. Maybe we've lost a battle or several, but the war is global in nature. And just by the mere fact of having been born into it, we'll be here as long as it lasts. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. We'll see each other tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow too. And I promise, I'll be in my best spirits, because I repeat, the war goes on, and this really is until the last one sounds. Thank you very much for being on the other side. You should know that the work you do by being there is just as important as the work we do here. By informing everyone together, we wake up more people, help them understand, and they have less and less time left to keep doing what they've always done, enriching themselves at our expense, and, generally speaking, at the expense of others' suffering. We will prevail, even though it seems like we've already lost. We have to keep holding on to faith and fighting for a better and much fairer world. Thank you for being here.